Hello, everyone. I hope you're well. I've got so sunburned today, but thankfully, because of pink lights behind me, you can't see that. It's completely masked. In the bathroom earlier, I was like a beetroot, and I come in here and I look great. So I'm just going to carry these lights around with me everywhere for the next couple of days, and no one will notice how sunburnt I am. So remember, guys, some of your medications make you more susceptible to sunburn because every year it catches me out. I hope you're all good, guys. After that little public service announcement, welcome in, Near Cheeks. Welcome in, TJ. Great to see you in, TJ. Welcome in, Lauren. How's the weather where you are on the other side of the world? Or almost the other side of the world. Amy, welcome in. Guys, usual drill. If it's your first time here, please do say hello. We are a peer support group first and foremost. Even when the interviews are ongoing, guys, please do lean on chat, use each other, ask questions. We were born out of being a peer support group where I just used to turn up and talk to myself in the hope that it helped somebody. Now we're very fortunate to have amazing guests like we have tonight, but we still carry that theme on. It's still what we're here for. Welcome, Cindy, all the way from Northern Ireland, I'm presuming you are tonight. Guys, let us know where you are. I love knowing where you're all watching from. If anything, it just gives me that shot in the arm that I need some nights when I'm struggling with my health. I'm having a good weekend this weekend. I was in a load of pain yesterday. Too many dad duties yesterday, lots of walking. I was in a pretty bad way last night. But I'm back again. I bounced back really quickly because even though I couldn't pace, sometimes you can't pace, guys, can you? Let's be honest. Like we all know we should do it, but sometimes life happens and you're not able to. But you can still work with it. And yeah, done all the right things today with baths and stretching and walking and yeah, and I'm back on my feet again, so I'm good. I'm just sunburnt. Feels like the other. I know, Lauren, and I hate to break it to you, Lauren. I have decided against that invitation to the talk in Las Vegas. So for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, we have community meetups here in the UK. We've had 4 or 5 now, which have been really successful. We even had people joining us from Ireland and all that sort of thing. I promised we have about 50-50 UK American audience here. I promised them that I would try and sort out a US meetup this year and try and like get a talking gig or something, which meant if I'm already out there, then we can sort out a day to do a social. I did get invited to Las Vegas for the Healthcare Advocates Summit to do a poster presentation, but when I worked it all out, it was an hour poster presentation for something that would have cost me nearly £2,000, and I just can't. I can't. Dylan already gives up enough of loses enough of my attention in a year without me also, blitzing our holiday spending money or something on a 1-hour poster presentation. So I'm really sorry, Lauren. It will happen. It will happen. It's good. There's a chance I'll be able to visit UK next year. You know we're absolutely holding you to that, Lauren. And by the way, guys, UK folks and the regulars in the community, we're now looking for our next location for our community meetup. So as a refresh, we've done Norwich. We've technically done 2 in Norwich. The second one was an impromptu when I stupidly said I was going to a gig on Twitch, and then a load of viewers bought tickets as well, which I'm doing that again. That's a bit freaky. You never know who's going to turn up. So we've done 2 in Norwich. We've done Birmingham. We've done Brighton. Suggestions so far has been Scotland, Newcastle. I'm also thinking Wales, mainly because I don't know if Lou was with us in chat, but mainly because I want an excuse to meet that man. So Wales feels like a good one. We haven't actually done London yet, TJ. We haven't done London yet, so yeah, that's also an option. So yeah, feel free to keep chucking them in, guys. And if you want to get involved, guys, want to know more about the community meetups, please head over and be a member and be an active member of our Discord community. The QR code's there on screen if you want to scan it on whatever device you're on. If not, just take a quick screenshot and you can use the link later. But basically, in order to keep people safe, it needs to be people that we know in the community. We can't just have an open invite on the internet. That wouldn't be safe. So yeah, once if you're an active member of the community or you're in these YouTube streams every single week, and we know who you are, but all the conversation, the people you're seeing in chat tonight, guys, all that conversation carries on during the week, talking about everything from food to moving more to going to the gym, holidays, music, books. Everything's talked about in there. Like I say, we are a peer support community first and foremost, so go check that out, especially if you want to get involved in future community meetups, because that's where the invitation goes out. Don't blame me. Yeah, Lauren, you can't dangle that in there. There's so many people in this community that want to meet Lauren, and yeah, the distance is difficult. Also doesn't help, Lauren, of where you are in America. Like, could you be any further away apart from Alaska? But yeah, thanks for all dropping in, guys, tonight. Really excited about tonight. I've got a bit of a croaky voice since I started this. I'm in the warm-up chat to Simon backstage. I don't know what that's about, so I'll let Simon do all the talking tonight. But I hope you're looking forward to this one. And guys, we are looking for a couple of people in July and August for the Chronic Pain Club. So if that's something you want to get involved with, get in touch. I don't think I've got a link like for my email, but my socials. Oh, I know what I could do. I'll put this up. All my links are there. So if you want to get involved and email me, if you've got a story to tell, please do let me know. So June, I think we covered all this on the last Chronic Pain Club, but just to recap, in June, I'm barely home. I'm spending a week in Vienna for EULAR, which we'll be talking about later tonight with Simon. I'm going to be in Stockholm for 9, maybe 10 days. There's potentially another event going on. The podcast is basically going on tour, which is amazing. So anyone who watches this tonight, if you want to listen to all of this stuff, like when you're walking a dog or on the commute, eventually the conversations we have here end up in an edited podcast format, which you can find there, or just search Joel Nelson on whatever platform you listen to. And yeah, that's all happening in June. So the Chronic Pain Club talk show, live show, will be taking a break. There will be lots of podcast episodes coming out though, directly from EULAR and places like that, directly from the IFPA conference in Stockholm. So loads going on the podcast in June, but very little on the talk show. But we do need talk show guests for July, August, just because I haven't got around to looking that far ahead. Normally we've got a big waiting list, but I've got so much coming up, felt a little bit overwhelmed. I've just not really given that side of it much attention. So if you want to get involved, you know where we are. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be doing anything special. If you want to talk about lived experience, shared decision making, things that are happening to improve patient outcomes, it doesn't matter if you're a patient, doesn't matter if you're from an organization, doesn't matter if you're from industry. We've had researchers, we've had doctors, we've had OTs, we've had physios. Obviously, lots and lots of patients sharing their stories. We exist here to amplify lived experience and the good work that's being done to embrace it. So it's a fairly broad brush, and it certainly isn't limited to chronic pain. So if that's something you want to get involved in, guys, get in touch, and we'll get you on the show later in the year. That's enough talking, I think, for me. I feel like we should get Simon in, especially because I've got a sore throat. Does anyone else get that after they get exposure to the sun, get a sore throat, or is that just me? Let me know in chat. So if this is your first time here, guys, what will happen shortly is the chat will disappear from screen, but you can carry on talking on whatever platform you're watching this on, but you will only see the messages from other people chatting on that platform. So as you can see, most people are here doing it on YouTube. So if you want to carry on talking to these good people, head over to YouTube and watch us on there. If you're watching on Facebook, then you'll only be able to talk in chat to the other people watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. But we can see all the messages and we'll feature the best ones. So even if nobody else is chatting on those platforms, please do put your comments and questions and we'll feature the best ones on screen. It really does help make for a much better video for when people watch it back, which the bulk of our audience watches these videos back over the next 12 months. So yeah, and if you have missed the start or you can't stick around to the end, there's basically 4 ways you can consume our content. You can watch it live like you are now. Otherwise, the minute we go offline, the entire live stream goes up on whatever platform you're currently watching, warts and all, unedited, start to finish. Then a couple of months later, we edit the video, so there's none of this waffle you're having to endure right now. It's just the interview, and then finally it ends up on the podcast in the audio format. So hopefully we're meeting people where they are and trying to cut up the important stuff as much as we can in various different formats for people to get where they want to get it. So let's take the chat off, but please do keep them coming in, guys, so I can feature the best ones. So let me I can get my notes. I'm so relaxed tonight. It's going to be the most relaxed chronic pain club I think I've done in a long while. So a well overdue conversation tonight on the Chronic Pain Club and also Joel Nelson podcast, as Dr. Simon Stone is an award-winning medical communication specialist and patient advocate, and somebody that if you are generally involved in the arthritis and autoimmune space on social media, you could not have missed, I don't think, by now. Simon, thank you so much for joining us and welcome in.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's long overdue, long overdue. So no, excited to be here.
Yeah, it really is. It feels like a lot. Well, I think it's way before most people I speak to on here. It's like, oh, we met over the pandemic. We were, I think, pretty much before
Pre-pandemic,
that.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and we're finally on a call, which is mad. So, just on the off chance anyone's watching this who aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to give us like a bit of a high level, who you are, where you're from, and what you do, and then we'll dive into the sort of medical side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Simon Stones. I am from a place which you might know of near Manchester called Bolton. So Peter Kay, Vernon Kay, lots of other famous actors and individuals. So it's quite a small place, but lots of big people. I'm born and bred in Bolton. I'm a local boy. I obviously have a variety of different health conditions, including juvenile arthritis, psoriatic subtype, Crohn's disease, and various other things along the way. And really, my experiences made me interested in health, in medicine, in research. And so went to university planning to do teaching. And this is, I think, how research can change lives. I was planning to teach biology, got excited by research at uni. Very long story short, I ended up doing a PhD looking at juvenile arthritis. And now I work in medical communications where I get to blend all of my experiences being a patient, being a carer, being interested and loving science, but also really passionate about making sure we involve patients and carers and family members in everything that we do, because when we work together with all our different expertise, that is when the magic happens.
Brilliantly said. And I'm sure as we talk through tonight, people will realise how having that foot in both camps and that interest it really is what makes you such a sort of phenomenal figure and force in the community. And also so very few people are involved, I feel like, on that sort of scientific and research side, like there's lots of us sharing our stories and doing things like I do here tonight. But I think it's really important for people that sort of angle towards that. So that was something research and that and the science stuff, I suppose, was something that always interested you by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and I think, when things are being done to you as a child, and things have changed a lot since the 90s and the early noughties when I was a child living with juvenile arthritis, and there's lots of things being done to you, and I started to become inquisitive. Why do I need to take that? Why do I need to add cream before an injection? Why is this the case? Why can't I be like my friends? And so there's a lot, that is the fundamental crux of being a researcher. You ask questions to find out whether the hypothesis is correct or not. So really, it was always there. But I think, and I presume many people will be able to relate to that, because for me, it's rather than just saying, well, you're having this, I want to understand why and the implications of that, because that is the fundamental basis of shared decision making, that we actually are informed by what's happening, what we can and cannot do, and what we can control. So I guess that's always been there. And I feel I was very, very lucky to have two parents who were very supportive of that. And particularly my mum, who has and had, well, she had, well, my mum passed away 5 years ago, but she had lots of lived experience with autoimmune rheumatology conditions and various other things as well. Um, but she was, from a very young age, she was very upfront with me. And I remember asking, I was in clinic and, it was 5 o'clock. They didn't have time to put the cream on before to have the injection. And, my mum had mobility issues, and it would mean them coming back the day after. It would be difficult. And so she said, it will hurt, the injection, it will hurt, but it'll be short. It won't last long. And it was the honesty that I had trust in my parents. I had trust in the health professionals. I really, I think it was about the age of 6, and never had cream again with taking through a blood draw. So I think all those, there's lots of different factors which influence, and having good healthcare professionals who talk to you as a child, you are aware of what's happening, and if things are explained in a age in a developmentally appropriate manner, then you help to overcome some of those issues, which could become issues later on, simply because the truth has not been told, or with
Yeah.
glossed over certain facts. And that's so important that we acknowledge that, and we try to be honest and supportive to people of all ages with chronic conditions.
I find this fascinating. In my head, I'm already seeing like this mini series because it's like you're the first person I'm pretty sure that has come on with the exact same subtype as me. So we've had lots of people with psoriatic arthritis on the show. We've had lots of people with JA, but I don't think I've had anyone else that's with the psoriatic associated subtype and had the onset as a kid like you did. Um, And my experience was very different. I'm clearly a bit older than you, and lots of them things. I think what you were saying there, which really stuck out, is like lots of things that happened to me on my own. Where I'd be admitted to the hospital for a couple of weeks, and my parents couldn't be there every minute of the day. There wasn't such things as facilities for them to stay, and all this sort of thing. And so those tests and trials and drug trials and various things, and them sort of horrible experiences that stick with you. I was kind of doing that on my own, and nobody's really explained that to me. And then the end result of that was kind of the opposite to you, where I shut off and didn't want to understand it, didn't want to know about it, kind of tried to bury it and forget about it. And it took becoming a dad where it all came out like mentally badly, and I then had to deal with it. And that's then what led me to advocacy, to start asking those questions. So I find that amazing. I think it's a really important point, that because you had that support, not just from the medical team, but your mum, and I remember being in contact with you when you lost your mum, and it was so clear that she had a huge role in all of that. And I just look at that, how you get it. We both ended up the same place, but we both went two very different
Yeah.
paths because of the support we had, and it shows how important those early experiences are, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't think we don't look enough at that, the support that's in place, and it's all the different factors, because it can just be one thing that's missing, and that can have such a lasting impact on, health, how people cope, and various other outcomes as well. So it is bizarre when you look at it, when you pinpoint it out like that. It's it's really stark. You see the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why it's really important we have these conversations, because it's not
Hmm.
just about what's happening here and now. It's about that journey, isn't it? And you must have experienced it, how I don't know if you said, or if I missed, when your onset was or when it was diagnosed, but your relationship with arthritis must have changed through your life. You start as a child and you go to university, and then you're trying to have a career, and did you find that the support was there as you transitioned through them sort of gates in life? I can't really think of a better way to put it. Um, or did you find it was kind of, you had to sort of get there on your own a little bit?
I mean, a bit of both. I mean, I wouldn't say they were gates. I probably said they were huge, big, jumps over cliff edges, to be honest. And it made
I
it
didn't want to be
made.
too leading.
I'll say it as it is. When I think back, I at 18, I hadn't sat down and had a conversation with another young person with arthritis.
Yeah.
And I think that we still see that today. I think it's happening less because there are more of the charity sectors doing wider reach out. Social media helps with that. But there are still people who do not have that conversation, maybe because they don't have access, maybe because they don't want to, or maybe they're just not sure on how to take it. So for me, my childhood with arthritis was lonely, in the sense that I didn't know what it was like to be to know another young person with the disease that I live with. I guess my circumstances potentially slightly different. So going back to very early days. So I said my mum had lots of conditions. So she had lupus, she had a muscle disease called polymyositis, she had osteoarthritis. I mean, the list goes on. Probably the whole textbook, the whole rheumatology textbook my mum had. And so my onset was noticed by my mum. So
Okay.
she bypassed the primary care routes,
Yeah.
which she would tend to go down. So there was two signs. So I had a hammer toe, and I had my fourth finger on my right hand where it was inflamed. So my mum actually took me to her consultant rheumatologist. And so my mum had which I think, back in the 80s, my mum was very poorly at one point, and to the point where the rheumatologist sat by her bedside all night.
Oh, wow.
Very different world to now, but
Yeah.
they had a very close relationship, in that sense that he truly cared, and without him, my mum probably wouldn't have survived. So she had that relationship. So she told me, she just said, "I've just noticed this," because my mum was always thinking, "Is there some hereditary component here?" And he actually then referred me directly to one of his consultant colleagues, who was a paediatric rheumatologist. So I ended up going to, sadly not down there, but Pendlebury Children's Hospital near Manchester. And actually, I requested my medical records about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating reading like a big stack like this.
Yeah. I
Um,
bet you're like
and
me. You always know when you're next to be called in because of the pile on the trolley outside the room.
I didn't realize how much. And you know what? There's a lot of stuff which I obviously don't remember. At this age, I was 3 years of age. I
Okay. Yeah.
don't really remember this. So I personally do not remember life before chronic health
Yeah.
conditions. I don't remember that at all, which you could say is a blessing, potentially. because I had nothing to compare against.
Yeah.
So that is my baseline. And so they were initially looking to diagnose me with a fibrous dysplasia. So they thought it was more not inflammatory, but more on that side, looking at potential skeletal abnormalities, muscle related. So I didn't realize all of this happened.
Mhm.
And when I've gone through the records, I went through various different. Oh, it is inflammatory. It's oligoarticular. So couple of joints, and then it was extended oligo, and then it ended up being psoriatic arthritis when I was
Yeah.
about 6 or 7, and that's obviously the diagnosis which has retained with me into well, that's another topic when we get to adulthood, and then slight changes
And
need to
then they,
happen to make sure you access treatment.
yeah.
So that was a diagnosis that then stayed with me, but I went through periods where probably wasn't doing too bad. So between 3 and about 7, I was treatment free. So it was managed with physiotherapy, occupational therapy. It seemed to be managed that way. And um, when I was 7, and this used to be a recurring pattern, I used to get really bad tonsillitis. So I was 7,
Okay.
got really bad tonsillitis, and literally every joint in my body just swelled. So my knee was like a football. I was unable to walk. I had to actually go in under general anaesthetic to have all the joints drained and then steroid injections put into each
Mhm.
joint. And then that was a recurring pattern then. And that's really when it was difficult to get the disease under control. I'd repeatedly have tonsillitis, which could be 10 times a year.
Yeah.
And if I didn't receive appropriate antibiotic treatment, it would go to a joint. And we had this constant back and forward. And that's when I started cycling through all the different disease modifying treatments. And that really lasted for a good 5 to 6 years, until I was non-adherent to the particular treatment. And many people will be on it, methotrexate.
Hmm.
It works for lots of people. For me, it didn't work. I had really bad side effects, and I ended up non-adherent.
Yeah.
Not trying to admit it as a child. You try, and that's probably maybe chat about that in a bit. But all those issues, and it was at that point I remember saying to my consultant, and my consultant in this period was incredible. I have to get a shout out to Dr. Eileen Baildon. I've had the pleasure to work with her since. She was incredible, and I owe a lot to her. And I remember sitting there with some of the who are now consultants who were like trainees, which is quite lovely to
Yeah.
see. And I remember saying, like, I'd rather be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I cannot live like this. And very long story short, I managed to get access to biologics, and
Yeah.
which is 20 years ago. It's my 20-year anniversary on biologics this year, and my life transformed with access to biologics. I went from having to use a wheelchair to get about to being able to walk, free of pain, free of nausea and vomiting. It was life changing, and my life changed since that point. Um, until more diagnoses came. So I got Crohn's disease when I
Yeah.
was 14. And so there's lots of all these pitfalls. And so the point I'm coming to is when you get to transition, you seem to be right. We've dealt with the arthritis, we're dealing with the Crohn's, and then you get shot into adult care, which is a very, very different setting to paediatric care.
Yeah.
And
Very.
and I think that is when the gaps fall. And I feel like I was reasonably lucky to be feeling reasonably informed, quite proactive, having had the experience all over those years of knowing things to do, things to ask. But that care changes so much, and I struggle. So for people who maybe are more newly diagnosed or who don't have the right information or the knowledge or the support to be able to access care, you can see why people go to university, they don't go for regular follow-ups, they don't have the treatment, and then will relapse and go into really big flare-ups and have potential lasting consequences because they're not in the right place and have not got the right support. So
Yeah.
there are lots of those situations, and I think in the years later, like, access to care has changed beyond measure. I am really worried, and I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit, where we are at the moment,
Oh.
because it is really, in terms of a system and a service, it is really,
Yeah.
really challenging at the moment.
Yeah, and somebody who worked in the NHS and has done for a number of years, I can see both sides, and both sides are equally harrowing. And I think that's why I don't make a lot of friends on social media in certain communities around my views on PIFU and patient-initiated follow-up, because I think as someone who's gone through that juvenile arthritis to adulthood, that massive jumping off a cliff, and you are about the third person that's come on this show and explained that transition as jumping off a cliff. You know, without educating anyone, and after spending decades of not letting patients really have a voice or be involved in shared decision making, everything, all of a sudden they're now got to know when to ask for help and try and navigate a system that's so broken in terms of accessing that help. It keeps me up at night, generally keeps me up at night, because I know how I felt as that 18-year-old who had to go into my rheumatologist's office for the first time on my own after having most of my childhood not being asked what I wanted or not being involved, and suddenly I'm on my own and I'm looking around and there's no one to say what I need and what, you know, that's going to feel like that for a lot of people. So it's a really worrying time, and I think what I would say though, Simon, is it makes people like yourself and what you're doing so much more invaluable and important, and yeah, and don't stop, despite I know how demoralizing it can feel. And trust me, at the minute.
I think you and me know both of us will never stop. So.
No, I don't think we can. Like, however detrimental to our mental health it might be, but you go back like 5 years when we were doing this, and like you can see all the little lights in the tunnel, and suddenly all of the landscape changed, and it's hard work. So one thing I just want to ask you before we get onto the advocacy bit is talking about transitions and pitfalls and things like that. Maybe you were because of your mother's situation, but were you aware that these other things could come along and comorbidities? Because in my journey, that was the thing that really, you know, wiped me out from a blind spot, in that nobody told you, oh, you got arthritis, but you could also get psoriasis and high cholesterol and depression and problems with bowels, you know, and all this sort of thing, and nobody prepared me for that. And obviously you've gone through a similar thing where they unfortunately come along a little bit like buses, like autoimmune disease does. How prepared were you for that, and to know to look for the signs?
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
In short, and that is one of my big concerns, always has been and always will be, is that, you know, we don't want to scare people by saying you have an autoimmune disease, it means you could get a whole rift of other conditions, because that is not necessarily the case. But I think there are, and I think particularly with psoriatic arthritis, there are certain things which you need to be aware of. You know, you know that you are at increased risk of cardiovascular disease, and I am 100% all about prevention and early detection. So if we know there are, and the evidence is very clear that there are certain comorbidities with psoriatic arthritis and other rheumatic musculoskeletal diseases, people should be aware at the right times. You know, maybe at diagnosis, that's not necessarily the right point to then say, oh, by the way, we need to be doing this. Well, there are appropriate time points when people have the right information, support, and, you know, self-efficacy in place, that they are equipped to be able to manage the condition, that we actually need to have those conversations to say, actually, you know, and I get really annoyed with psoriatic arthritis. You know, psoriasis is like the lower rung on the, you know, on the ladder. You know, we don't talk about psoriasis. It's all about the joints. But actually, you know, the psoriasis symptoms may be affecting me more than the actual joint symptoms. That's certainly the case for me, you know. So there's that, and then I think we know
your
particularly
confidence, if anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I try to have this conversation with people to say it doesn't matter how big the rash is or how visible it is; it's how it makes me feel. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, I remember being in school, and, you know, at that point in high school, my joints were reasonably okay. You know, I was in remission, minor flare-ups, but it was my skin. You know, my skin would pop and bleed in class, and I used to be covered in plasters. You used to hate it. I'd literally be like sitting on my hands, or, you know, trying not to show my hands to other people, because I was ashamed of what it looked like. You know what kids are like, oh, it's infectious, I'm going to catch something, all those kinds of things. It's horrible. And it's just, you know, they hurt as well.
It's totally underestimated how much it hurts.
It hurts, but it for me, it was always like, I don't like the way that my hands look. They look ugly. Now, that's a really important thing for me, which if I could have got treatment that would have helped, that 100% would have been amazing. But that wasn't necessarily the priority for the clinician, because, well, your inflammatory markers are low, so it's okay. Well, no, it's not okay. That's not right, because we need to be looking at people as a whole, not just clinical outcomes. So it's all part of, you know, the evidence is very clear. Holistic, we need to be holistic. We need to focus on everything, but the translation to reality is far from where it should be.
No, that's my biggest bugbear. The whole, like, you know, we're looking for people for a focus group, but you have to have, you know, moderate to severe skin disease coverage. Well, no, because that's only taken a section, and it might be a section where maybe people aren't adhering to treatment or don't have access to treatment, and it skews everything. Well, you'll know this more than anything from your scientific sort of background, and that trying to get people to understand that it's not how it looks to you or what it says on a blood test, because I've always had low inflammatory markers. Always took me forever to get diagnosed because of that reason. And if I had a pound for every time an appointment started with, well, your blood tests look okay, so and then from that point, you waited 6 months for an appointment, and within
I
7
know.
seconds, okay, well, I'm not going to get anywhere with this, because they're already made up their mind that everything's well managed. But it might not be for you. It might be how it's making you feel or how it's affecting your work or relationships. And
Of
yeah,
course
we
it is.
definitely speak the same language on that one.
And that should be the conversation. And, this is not to put blame on health professionals, because, health professionals are time constrained, and there's lots of other
Yeah,
issues
100%.
at play. But the first conversation for me should always be, how are you doing? And to
Yeah,
genuinely mean that, and then to begin with that, and then work around, okay, what are the joints like? What is the skin like? How is everything else doing? Let's check X, Y, and Z. That for me, that is the approach. And you do see that, but again, it's inconsistent, and it's that lack of
yeah.
consistency within centres, but then across the country, in different countries, that inconsistency, which is letting us down.
Yeah, and in the UK over recent years, or England especially in the recent years, how regional that can be as well, with the way the system's now set up. It's just, I'm sure you're in the same boat, but I find like I'm a bit of a collector of experiences now, where the amount of stuff that comes into your inbox, and you get a real idea of where the pain points are, and it still surprises me. It still shocks me how I can have a challenge in Norwich, and in London that's just not an issue, or vice versa. And yeah, how do we advocate for that? I don't know, because it's on such a micro level now. It's really challenging, isn't it?
I know, but there is that need for, you can understand the importance of like localized care and community care, and that's right. But we need to have,
Yeah,
it needs to be integrated, it needs to be joined up, and it needs to be consistent, because it should not be a postcode lottery, and that's what really hurts me in terms of health, equity. No matter where you are in the country, you should have access to the same level of care and support wherever you are, whatever your
100%.
background. And our politicians need to hear that. It's got to come down from them. I think our health workers know that. But it's
Yeah,
down to the leaders who really have the ultimate authority to begin to make these changes. So hopefully some of them will be listening back to this, because they need to talk with patients, and not just talk, but actually act on what's being said.
yeah, and that's why lived experience is so important, because only you can talk about those moments where it's like jumping off a cliff, or them experiences you had. And as much as we've got lots of people sort of trying to do good and trying to raise awareness, and without that lived experience to back up what the real, what it was like to actually live it, I think that's the really powerful thing. And I always say, like, you stick up people like you and me and some of the people I see in chat tonight in front of those decision makers, and start pulling on them heartstrings. I think that's generally where you get change, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because you can appeal to the human side in anyone. So I suppose that probably does bring us naturally onto the advocacy side. And you can tell what sort of people we are, Simon. We've just been talking advocacy the whole time, even though we're supposed to have been talking about your health journey. We're just sort of naturally talking policy instantly already. So obviously you were, and I'm gonna embarrass you a little bit here, because when I first started doing this, you were the first person I ever met genuinely. I had gone, ever since I was a child, hiding my condition. I don't hide the fact that I did that. And again, I think the way the system was kind of led me to that. When I was ill and in a wheelchair, I hid away, and when things were good, I pretended that never happened and tried to rebuild my life until it went wrong again. And so when I finally decided to start sharing this stuff around about sort of 2018, 2019, and I'd done this like little blog, there would be various people on there in the comments and stuff. And I remember clicking on your name at some point. So you must have commented on it at some point. And I was like, I'm going to try not to swear and say, like, oh my God, this guy, this guy's doing the same sort of thing as what I want to do. And it just blew my mind. I must have spent hours looking at your blog and site and doing a little bit of social media stalking, sorry. And only to find that you were literally this like absolute perfect sort of image of the thing I thought needed to be done. So firstly, thank you for that, because I genuinely wouldn't be sitting here today. I just wouldn't. That blog would have still been sort of semi-private and not shared with anyone, if it wouldn't have been for us crossing paths. And also just to continue inspiring me. Like every time I feel like I've had a little bit of success or a breakthrough, I look across to see what you're doing, thinking, wow, that guy's absolutely killing it. So yeah, I'm gonna stop embarrassing you, but I just wanted to get that in there, because it generally is so important to my
Thank
story
you.
and my
Thank you.
journey, that if I wouldn't have come across the work you're doing. But maybe you want to tell people how you got started on all of that.
I will, yeah. So like I said, I'd never met any young people before. I was 18. And I was actually invited back to Manchester. So this was when I transitioned to adults. And the paediatric team very nicely put together this little, it was like a Saturday afternoon meetup, and there was parents and young people there. And I was so excited, like, to actually chat with other young people and, just talking about our experiences. And it was just amazing. And honestly, that was my real first experience of peer support. Um, and they asked me the consultants asked me to give like a short presentation. I think I was applying for university, and there was some younger children there as well, and they wanted to try and give them a little bit of hope. So that was like the early days of seeing transition coming into reality. And my former consultant said there is a clinical studies group which was funded by what is now Versus Arthritis and the National Institute for Health, and it was National Institute for Health Research, NIHR as most people will know it. And it was this clinical studies group, the paediatric rheumatology across the UK, that prioritise the research that researchers should be trying to look at. They'd had 2 parents on that group, but they'd never had a young person. And so, Phil Riley came and up to me and said, "Would you consider applying?" And I was like, "Well, I don't really know what to do, but yeah, I'll give it a go." No idea. I applied, and so they said, "We'll put you in touch with the NIHR Patient Public Involvement Officer." I will have to give a huge shout out, because she's really the person that got me involved in research, and that's Jenny Preston. Lots of people I'm sure will know Jenny. She works at Alder Hey Children's Hospital. She's incredible and very active in patient public involvement, and just a really lovely person who wants to equip young people with that knowledge and that the skills to be able to get involved in research. So Jenny helped me to do that, and I joined the clinical studies group in 2012. So I was actually I was 18 at the time. Joined the group, and I remember going to my first meeting, and it was held in Manchester. So I thought, great, I got a little overnight stay at a hotel. It was all new to me. It was all exciting. Like
Yeah.
I felt important. And I remember sitting in the meeting, and so the one of the parents who was in attendance was Sharon Douglas. Sharon runs a charity in Scotland called Snack, for children with arthritis. And Sharon was again hugely supportive, very well informed and expertise as a parent. So she was hugely important, and she met me before, and just gave me a bit of a sense of what the group is. But I remember sitting in the room, and there was like 30 people, mostly rheumatologists, pediatric rheumatologists, got physiotherapists, trainees. You had Sharon, and I just remember thinking, sitting through the meeting, going through an agenda, and it was all new. It was all new stuff,
Yeah.
talking about biobanks and this kind of research. And I think for the first morning, like, I didn't even say a word. Like, I didn't know what to do. The chair was Michael Beresford, again, incredible researcher and paediatric rheumatologist, and he was very good at like asking me for my input, but I didn't know what to say. I felt, well, nothing important to say. Like, they all know what they're talking about. Like, what's my job here? And it was a little bit overwhelming, but I think the support that they had, and there was such a lovely group where they actively made an effort to reach out, even if it was like in the coffee break, saying, "Well, what did you think about that?" And then they started to tease that information out, that lived experience, and give me the, okay, actually, I have a role here. I have something really
Yeah.
important to say, and that was really important. But that was my first ever interaction as a patient advocate. At the time, I didn't realise that I was called a consumer representative, which is not the nicest term. Um,
But how
but
important was
the
that first
premise was there.
experience? Do you know what I mean? How important was that first experience, that it wasn't a tick box thing, which unfortunately we still encounter, many of us. And I will say now that I can know in 5 minutes if I'm here because they needed
Yeah,
a patient tick, or because they genuinely, the fact that they appreciated it could have been intimidating. They teased that stuff out. They were genuinely looking for your view. And then look what that led to, Simon, and if that would have been a different experience, who knows? Maybe you never sort of said yes again, So it's really
I know
important,
there
isn't
could
it?
have well been. I could have, turned around and said, "Actually, this is not for me. I'm not going to do it," and I probably wouldn't have ended up having my job, doing advocacy. It is bizarre, and I'm sure you will relate to this. But it's all about the people that you meet, and you meet some
Yeah,
people who you maybe think, "I'm not going to work with you," or you realise that actually this is a tick box. You don't genuinely care, and with confidence, you can walk away from that in time.
yeah,
I'm happy to admit that I've done tick box exercises, thinking,
yeah,
well, no, I need to be here. It's important. Actually, sometimes it is better walking away because
yeah.
there's
It
going to be
just
no
takes a
real driven change
It
from
takes a
that, and
long
it
while to
does
get there,
take.
though, doesn't it? It does
It
take a
does.
for way too many years. I did things that left me feeling used and dirty and cheated, or
Yeah,
I saw my name and image used to sort of support something which I wasn't really involved in. They just wanted to have a patient face or name next to it, but it takes a long while to get past that. Because I'm sure you experience it. When it's very empowering, that feeling. You go to them things and they're terrifying at first, and then, like you say, you come away and it's exciting and empowering. It's like, oh my gosh, these people actually care what I have to say, and finally someone's listening to what that experience was like for me. And it's
yeah.
like it's a bit of a drug. It's like
It
it's a
is.
powerful thing.
It's addictive. It's addictive.
Yeah.
And really, from those first meetings on that clinical studies group, one of the members was Professor Helen Foster from Newcastle,
Mhm.
paediatric rheumatologist, and she again, it's all these interactions with people that lead to these different paths that you go down. So I remember her saying, it's 2013. She said, I'm setting up this task force with EULAR. So that was my first introduction to EULAR, creating recommendations for transition, and I want you to be one of our patient partners. Oh, me? Like me? Really? Um, and so she got me involved in that task force, which led to my work with EULAR, which we'll touch on shortly. And then very similarly, there was another researcher who came to the group wanting to look at developing mobile applications for children and young people with rheumatic diseases. Professor Veronica Swallow, who's currently at Sheffield Hallam. And Veronica was lovely and brought me into that team. So she was at the stage of design. What do we do? So she brought me in. She made me co-applicant on the grant. She made me a co-researcher. That was where I got my first publication, my first conference presentation from that work, my first publication in a peer-reviewed journal with her,
Amazing.
and then she became a PhD supervisor. And
Oh, brilliant.
it is all. See, I find it amazing. Like, just one single interaction can transform what you do moving
Yeah.
forward. And for me, it's all about meeting those people who are like-minded, who care, and you can see straight away where they want to genuinely collaborate. They want to do things for the right reason. And I just feel very blessed to have been able to meet those people, and they've shaped my life. It is those interactions which, when you sit back like now, it's like, oh, wow, yes, like, I am so lucky that that happened, because if I wasn't there in that period, in that moment in time, then so many other things would not have happened.
Yeah, and it is it's really special, and those people are really special. Unfortunately, they can be a bit few and far between. And I had a similar experience where, like, I went to Italy 2 years ago, and I was right on the verge of, I'm done with this. Like, again, bad experiences and everything else, and we want you to write this, but we're not going to give you any compensation for your time, and we're not going to credit you. And I'd done some involvement in some research stuff, and my name wasn't on the papers, all of that sort of thing. And then you go there, and you every now and then you'll cross paths with special people that really do believe in the same things that you do, with patient involvement and shared decision making and all them sort of things, and co-creation. And I come away from there just different person. I think my wife probably saw a change when I came back from that, and it's like, right, I now know what I want to do. I now know what I'm not going to do, but I also now know what I'm going to do. And it's really powerful, isn't it? It's really powerful. And
100%.
and sometimes it can feel like we're kind of like shouting into the void or preaching to the choir. And I think it's probably a good time to sort of remind us, even if you just need this today, Simon, if not anyone else listening to this, is like, it does have an impact, because there's definitely been times where, well, like I say, crossing paths with you elevated then what I wanted to go on and do, or what I did do, or times when, projects have happened because of our relationship, or recommendations and things like that. And it might feel like sometimes we're not having an impact, but you never really know where that message is landing and who it's helping, do you?
No, and I think sometimes when you get drilled down with the day to day, advocacy can be a full time job.
Yeah.
It's draining. So when you're doing that, and probably, working as well, and you've got a family, and you've got your health conditions. Sometimes you do feel, and I very occasionally will think, why am I doing all of this? Like, why am I putting myself through this? And then I will have an interaction with somebody, and I'll have messages from that over the years, and somebody said, "Oh, that thing that you posted like 10 years ago, like it just transformed my life." And I'm like, "Oh my God," like
Yeah.
it really, I feel really humbled by those interactions. And you don't want to hear it because you don't want anybody to be in that situation, but it just is just that constant reminder of, this is important. This is why I do what I do. And when I go to meetings and when I do, online events, I get that buzz again. And sometimes you need it when you're drilled down with day to day, all the challenges that we've got to face day to day. You are just reminded of why we need to exist as a community. Realistically, there shouldn't be a need for advocates, but
No,
there is
no.
going to be a very long need for advocates. We shouldn't exist if the right scenario was there.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not. So we have a really important role, and I guess what I've seen lots of advocates over the years, and some good, some bad, and I think that's okay to acknowledge. And what I don't like is competition.
Yeah.
We are all people with lived experiences, no conditions worse than the other. We all have valid um, experiences that need to be heard. Nobody's more important than others. And sometimes it can feel like that when you see, your patient leaders who are, in organizations and doing that kind of work. And then you're maybe a newly diagnosed patient or a carer. And you think, like, oh, what do I bring? Well, you bring an awful lot. And it's
Yeah.
important to realize that all those experiences matter. And just because you maybe have less experience in a certain setting, or you don't know the jargon for clinical research, doesn't matter. Actually, what matters is your perspective and what you want to do. And so I feel like every opportunity to get to say that is, like, there's no need for competition.
No.
Let's scrap that, because we all have a right to be heard, and everybody needs to be heard. And the more we do together, we're such a powerful community when we do that. And that's broadly the case, but there are ones that can take one or two situations, and it can be really off-putting. And I've noticed that over the years where I think, oh, right, I'll take a step back then. But no, actually,
Yeah.
please don't do that. Do what is right for you, but you've got to keep speaking up, because it's so important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And yeah, unfortunately, we live in the age of social media, which kind of tries to facilitate that sort of competitive side, or maybe only sharing what people think is going to be popular, and that means then we're not covering the stuff that maybe is important. But the bit I always say is, if people aren't advocating and sharing their story, even if you don't want to use the word advocating, if you're not sharing your story, then I can't function as an advocate, because I need to know what's happening on the ground now. I need to know, what's happening if you're newly diagnosed, what's happening if you're a kid with JIA these days. What, because all I can bang on about is my personal experience from the 90s, and that's very dated now, and it's getting like very distant in the past. So I can't do my job if people aren't sharing. So it should be, like you say, it should be something we embrace. But unfortunately, we do live in a little bit of a world where it is all about the likes and the shares and the clicks, and that can lead to that. So yeah, it's a really important point for you to raise. I think something you said earlier as well leads us nicely on to EULAR, because you said about like energy, and we're trying to manage these conditions, and I'm very much in this space at the minute where I'm a week or two away from heading out to EULAR. I should feel very fortunate, but I'm very overwhelmed. I'm trying to manage a health condition. I'm worried about if I'm going to get sick. I'm worried about the work you got to do alongside the day job and everything else. And I know once I get there, it'll be amazing, and the community and the family, if it all comes together and re-energizes me for the rest of the year. But at the minute, I'm in that sort of like pre-event sort of lull. I don't know if you can relate to that, but
100%.
oh, good. Sorry, it's not just me. I always
No,
beat
no.
myself up about feeling ungrateful. But for anyone that isn't familiar, do you want to just maybe tell us a little bit about what EULAR is? Because it's a term they've heard me use on the show for a few weeks now, and maybe your involvement and recent new change, I suppose, in terms of involvement with EULAR.
Yeah, so EULAR is a brilliant organisation. It stands for the European Alliance of Associations for Rheumatology. That is a reasonably new name to be reworded it basically from the old European League Against Rheumatism, which was a outdated reference to what EULAR does. And really, EULAR brings the whole rheumatology community together in Europe, but actually around the world. It's one of the big pan Europe, but also they've got like the ACR in America, the American College of Rheumatology. We've got the Asian League, we've got the South American and African. So there's all the different leagues, if you wish. But EULAR is one of the leaders in advocating for everybody involved in rheumatology. And what I really, really love about EULAR is that patients aren't on the sidelines. So they treat the scientific society is representing your rheumatologists. You've got them in sort of one pillar. You've got the health professionals in rheumatology, so nurses, physios, OTs, mental health teams, social workers, all in the health professionals in rheumatology pillar. And then you've got PARE, which stands for people with arthritis and rheumatism in Europe. Essentially a little bit outdated, but it does what it says on the tin. It's the PARE, and there's a real identity to PARE, so that's why that name sticks so well. And it is the people with RMDs, rheumatic and musculoskeletal diseases, and that's the third pillar of EULAR. And that's really how they view how rheumatology research and care should be done with all those people together. So EULAR does lots of work. So as we know, we've got the Congress coming up. So that's one of the big events that EULAR hosts every year, the annual European Congress of Rheumatology, usually end of May, beginning of June, in a different European country. And that really brings everybody together for lots of exciting discussion, networking, poster presentations, oral presentations. The list goes on, and it is a really exciting week. But that's a lot of people just think that's what EULAR does, but it's not. They have different committees. So there are sorts of topic committees. There's research, quality of care, and then there are the communities as well. So you've got the paediatric community committee. You've got the health professionals of rheumatology. You've got EMUNET, which is the young rheumatology and research community, and then you've got the PARE committee. And so really through the PARE committee, that's when aside from the project I mentioned previously, which was one of the recommendations. So they had, as a separate string, they had these task forces which develop recommendations for various different topics. So transition, there's one vaccination, on patient involvement in research, lots of different recommendations to help guide research and care that's delivered. But within the PARE community, I got involved after hearing about it. As you do a bit of research. I'm on this task force, the transition. Okay, what do they do? And they were recruiting for the members for young PARE. So this is 10 years ago now. And they were recruiting for young PARE. So it was 18 to 35. And they wanted to try and expand the work that PARE does to focus on young people, because that was an unmet need that had been identified in some previous research. So I'll give this a go. So I applied, and I managed to become a founding member of Young PARE. So that was really exciting to actually, okay, this is when my advocacy is, growing in the UK. I'm actually now stepping a foot and starting to do international advocacy. So that was that first interaction. And I remember meeting the team in, I think it was March 2015, and we had a meeting in Zurich to sort of do terms of reference, co-create all that kind of, all the important stuff when you're running a group. So that was great experience to me. But then to meet like these other young people from different countries, to hear their experiences, really making you realise how lucky we are in the UK to have a health service where you can have access to treatment. All these things which you do not think about when you are in your little bubble. And really, as you do, one thing led to another. So I ended up applying to more different task forces, and being invited to speak at the EULAR Congress, being invited to speak at the PARE conference. So that's like a separate conference, usually later in the year, which is on a specific topic for all the different patient organisations in Europe. So I started being invited to those, and then I was asked to join this at the same time I transitioned to do my PhD as well. And I was invited to, join the young research community. That's how I'm a patient. It's like, it doesn't matter. You can be both. I was one of the first times where it's like, oh, I can be, because most people, it's like we had to pick, you're either a researcher or you're a patient. Actually, no, I am a patient researcher. And so I joined that EMUNET group for 3 years. And I don't know, there's something very, very special about the European rheumatology community, because all especially the young researchers, like they are 100% switched on in terms of, patients involved. We do things together. I remember, sitting down with Eleanor from London and Paul from Vienna, and two young rheumatologists. And we had this idea about actually patient-reported outcomes don't really address what's important for young people. So, Joel, I'm sure you remember completing the chat questionnaire where, can you open the door? Can you open the jar handle? Do you do like domestic duties or whatever? I can't remember the exact wording, but all those things which like, what sort of young person actually does, like domestic duties?
I just want to kick a football with my mates or whatever.
So, I can't hold my phone, or I can't, I
Yeah.
can't operate the remote, or it's all those kinds of things. And so we were chatting about it, and it's like, all right, well, let's do something about it. And so we applied through a grant, and we created some recommendations for young person-focused patient-reported outcome measures. And it was just an example of that. Literally, that is how easy. Let's get together. Let's talk about something. Let's do something together with our combined expertise and knowledge of where we can get funding. Let's do something, and we made it happen. And that is what I love about the EULAR community, because there is that want to do things better, to do things differently, and to admit, okay, we've maybe not done things very well historically, but we can do things differently now. So that's what I love about that, and I just love everything that they stand for. Patients are embedded in every level, up to the vice president representing PARA. So on the highest level of authority at EULAR, you have patient representation, and for me, no matter what organisation we are in, if we don't have patient involvement at that level, then somebody with lived experience, you truly never get that filtering down. We can do so much grassroots up, but it's got to be a top-down approach as well, because without leadership buy-in, you make zero headway on where we need to be.
I'm clipping that, and I'm going to go around the UK in a minibus with a loudspeaker on the top, and because like that's as somebody that got into sort of global advocacy like yourself, I find like you get a bigger appreciation, don't you, of where the challenges are, and as much as I sort of wanted to help back home, I sort of realised, well, actually, it makes me a much better advocate and a person, human being, if I can understand that, okay, this is a challenge in this part of the world, and this is a challenge in that part of the world, and that having lived experience at every level, including the top, that is something I've really opened my eyes since I've started doing this on a global level, and realized there's certain pockets, I'm being very careful with my words, that I've really got to learn from that. So I think all of that stuff you just said is brilliant, and I have not heard a better and more passionate explanation for EULAR than everything you just said there. So thank you so much for sharing. And I did notice you didn't share that you're now chair-elect, I believe, for that.
And I didn't get onto that.
No,
I can talk. I can talk for England. So.
No, you were so passionate about the organisation and the body. It was amazing.
Forget about me.
You went away from personal. Yeah, so let's talk about Simon for a little bit, and tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've been on the PARA committee, so I came off Young PARA after my term ended, then joined the PARA committee, which is the adults group. Anybody not in the 18 to 35, even though I still fit that category. But I joined the PARA committee because it was a natural progression, and that for me is what it's all about, like equipping younger people with the skills and knowledge to be able to know, okay, I know a little bit about research, know a bit about that. I've got more confidence, and I want to do more. So that's what that natural progression for me is always so important. So joined the PARA committee a couple of years ago, and then an opportunity came up last year where, so the current structure is there's always the chair, and then there's either a past chair or a chair-elect. So current chair is Peter Boyd from Ireland, a great guy. I've had the pleasure to work with him for a number of years. And the current past chair is Susie Macri from Cyprus. Again, Susie's hugely experienced within our world of rheumatology and patient involvement. And so the opportunity came up, and so I believe I was nominated. So I didn't put myself forward. So I nominated a few people, and then got in. The team from EULAR reached out and said, would you like to apply? And I did debate it, because it's not. I can't do anything half-heartedly, and I had to think. Okay, I've got a full-time job. I've got my health conditions. I've got all my other advocacy as well. I care for my dad as well at home. and I've got all these other, I'm trying to live a life as well, that little thing on the
Yeah,
side.
I think you just take all you do involved in advocacy, and I'm already thinking, how do you fit it all in? But yeah,
And
life
I
is
did,
important, Simon, as well.
it is. And I was debating it. I was like, but I'm not going to get this opportunity necessarily again. And I was like, do you know what? Let's do it. So I applied, and in March I got an email to say the EULAR board met and that they had elected me as the chair elect. And I remember just looking at the email, thinking, did that just happen? Did that just happen? And I didn't get just like the email. I was like, oh, okay. And then people started to message me from EULAR afterwards saying, congratulations. I was like, oh, this is real. So it is very, very exciting though. And I I guess my leadership style is all about, there's no, leader at the front. It's all about we do things together. We have those ideas. I've got my ideas, which, I will be communicating what I want, and it's all about patient involvement at every step. It's all about young people. It's all about those people who are, described as hard to reach. No, no, no. We just need to reach them. People who are not included in the conversation. That is going to be my priority, and to do things in a truly integrated manner. So that's my approach, which is not probably no surprise whatsoever. But no, my term officially starts after the EULAR Congress. So I have 12 months as chair-elect. So I get to learn from Peter, from Susie, the current past chair, and then Elsa, who's our vice president representing PARE. Do that for 12 months, and then from 2025, that's when my term as chair for 2 years happens, and then I had 1 year as past chair. So it's a 4-year term. I'm just very, very excited to be doing that, and it'll be great for me to reach out to more of our UK organisations under our member organisation, which is ARMA, the Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Alliance, to look at what more can the UK do within EULAR, because sometimes I think there's more we could be doing, because I know there's amazing work that's happening. So that's going to be one of the other things. How do we celebrate that? And working like the EULAR team, so the EULAR PARE committee is supported by Becca and Berta, and they are two amazing, committed individuals who have years, decades of experience. So it's a really well-oiled machine. There's a great committee, and what I love about going to EULAR is that we call it a PARE family, and I genuinely mean that. Is I feel cared for by the PARE community. And I think that is such a lovely, lovely experience to have. That actually, the work that we do, it is work, but it's not work when you are having a lovely time with people who genuinely care, who understand what it's like, and we get on and do things. And there's something so uplifting about that. And for me, it's about we need to be demonstrating how amazing this is, because that will inspire other people to think, I want to do patient advocacy. I have a role to do here. And that's what I want. I want more people on board, more people involved, and more researchers to realise we're going to have to watch out, because the patients are going to be taken over otherwise.
and how you can actually do real work. I think, over the last couple of years, I think the pandemic didn't help, because lots of accounts and things popped up. People got very confused and thought advocacy was, social media posts of injections or whatever that might look like, or getting on a bandwagon about a certain medication, and it kind of got lost in that you can actually be hands-on doing real work, and I think you're such proof of that. Like, it's just, your journey is just amazing, and I don't feel like we're even scratched the surface on it yet. Like this new news, we're definitely gonna have to get you back, because I've already seen we're overrun, so thank you for giving up more of your Sunday night. But yeah, I don't think I've done a show where I've smiled as much. My cheeks ache, Simon, because it's just like, because everything you say is my language, but also it gives me hope for the future. And if it gives me hope for the future, hopefully it gives other people out there hope for the future, that we really are seeing a sort of change in terms of patient involvement and lived experience. And just, big thank you from me and on behalf of the audience of leading the charge on that, because you've certainly been, my inspiration. I'm not on here every week saying that to everyone, genuinely. And my wife, who's in chat at the minute, will be able to vouch for that you lit a spark in me, and the fact that 5, 6, 7, whatever years later it is, you're still thinking, oh, if someone's doing that, I can do more. And it's mad. So yeah, massive thank you. I can't thank you enough on behalf of the patient community.
No, not at all. And every time I see what you're doing, I'm like, how does he do it? How does he do it? And I think that, you
Badly.
inspire me as well. And that is what keeps us going. It's the inspiration from our community. And I have to say, and I'm not even touched on the work that I do as a medical communicator.
No, you're definitely coming back. I've
I will have to come
intentionally
back
left a
on
big
that.
chapter out because I've got an excuse to reel you back in. You can't say no.
But I think that is, I get to work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm also on. There's so much you can do outside, and then sometimes you need to go in and start to change things from within. And when you are within, you begin to realise, from the outside, you can see, health system's bad, industry's bad. Actually, the people that I work with day to day have a genuine passion. And there's some of the, it's navigating the red tape, it's all those kinds of conversations. But it really helps when you've got people inside saying, okay, this is what matters, this is what's happening in the real world, here's what you need to do, and then helping them to do that. And that is what we are. We are the bridge. We are the bridge
Yeah,
between patients, between health professionals, between professional societies, between industry, between regulators, policy. That and you can't necessarily do everything. If you can, amazing. But it's all about what we do together. But we are that link because we provide, as advocates, we provide that bridge and that different perspective. Um, so I just really wanted to touch on that. But I think we'll have to come back and talk about medical communications on a different
yeah,
chat because
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
whole nother world. But again, all comes back to actually making information, making research accessible and relevant to people with lived experience, and that's what I do day to day, alongside all the advocacy work. But that's what it for me. It's what it's all about. Health should not be for the privileged. Access to information should be not to those individuals. It should be accessible to everybody, and that's like knowledge is power. So when you get things in the right format to people, that's when that light bulb comes on and they think, okay, I can live with this condition. I can do what I need to do to be able to cope. And then, so the next step, right, what can I do to make a difference? What can I do to change things for the better based on my experience?
Amazing. I think, and everything you just said there just shows anyone who was wondering how come you're involved in so many things and get asked to do so many things. Right there, you've just not only have you given the best explanation of what EULAR is I've ever heard. That bit there, I'm going to be clipping this conversation for all year because of the amount of little sound bites that you've given us. So I really appreciate your time, Simon. I know we've gone over, so thank you for that. I will be recording a certain podcast when I'm in EULAR. So if you don't want to get collared again within like 2 weeks of giving me some
Oh, happy to be collared.
views, avoid my booth because me and my recorder will be there. But if you want to come back, that'd be great.
Oh,
And yeah,
absolutely.
if you'd like to come back and we'll talk about your medical communication work, which I know you're obviously a specialist of as well, which we didn't quite get onto tonight, that'd be amazing. Have you got anything else you want to say? Any sort of final messages? Let people know where you are. We have got people sharing links in chat who are watching this live. They'll be on screen as well where people can find you. But is there anything else you want to say whilst you got the time?
All I would say is, for people who are listening, just reach out. If you want to get involved in any type of patient advocacy, get it. Reach out. Like my conversations are always open. I might not reply straight away. I try to do my best. But we are a community. We are here to support each other. So if you just have an idea of, okay, maybe want to do that, reach out. And we've all got so many contacts. There's lots we can do together. So I would always say that never feel isolated, even if it's just to have a rant. I've always got a listening ear. But I think it's just so important that people realise this. This world of advocacy is not for the privileged few who have worked to be at that position. Yes, we have worked, but everybody has a right to be there as well. And for me, that is all about bringing up the next generation of advocates as well, because it's good to have fresh blood. It's good to have fresh perspectives. And like I say, my lived experience is still happening, but a lot of it is from many years ago. So we need those new perspectives constantly being included to make sure everything's relevant for the people of today.
Absolutely brilliant. Simon, thank you for being an amazing advocate, a brilliant guest, and an even better friend to me over the years. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to finally meeting you in person. It shouldn't have taken this long, but there was a pandemic
I
in the
know,
middle of it. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you in person in a
I
couple of
know.
weeks' time in Vienna. So until next time that you're inevitably back on this show, look after yourself, and I hope your health plays ball as best it can, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, and yeah, see you next week.
Thank you, Simon. Bye-bye. Guys, let me just bring chat back up on screen. Oh, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. My cheeks actually ache from grinning at everything Simon was saying. Like it was just brilliant. And hopefully you get a little bit of an insight of why I was sort of sharing my interaction with Simon and how I came across him, because he generally elevated me and made me sort of like, or it set a path, I suppose, for what you see here today. Like, yes, we do different things, but it's it's utilized. Advocacy can be just as simple as sharing your story, or it can be using your skills that you've already got to try and meet people where they are. And for me, I'm a bit of a creative person, so I write and podcast, and let's be honest, anyone that was watching this 2 years ago, I can't sit here and say I do live stream, because that was absolutely not natural to me. It still isn't today, as much as it wasn't a couple of years ago. We just saw a need, but the important bit is seeing a need and trying to fill it, and Simon's doing some incredible things, but hopefully tonight that conversation, guys, has inspired some people out there to just start sharing their story. It doesn't need to be grand, it doesn't need to be massive. It can literally just be sharing your story, and we've said it before on this show, it can be as simple as telling your support network, your loved ones, those closest to you. I felt like I didn't have much of a support network when I was a kid, so I hid it. I lied. I led a series of chapters where I was either the well Joel or the sick Joel that hid away, and that wasn't a healthy way to live. And it took becoming a parent for me to realize that wasn't a healthy way to live, and also it certainly wasn't a good example to set my son. So I started changing that, and then all this happened. But so it doesn't need to be grand, it just needs to be simply talking about your lived experiences, because they generally are very powerful. And like we said on that interview earlier, guys, I can't advocate without knowing what the challenges are. At the minute, touch wood, my condition is fairly well managed. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I am knocking on 40 now, so everything's starting to fall apart a little bit. But if I don't know what's going on with people that are newly diagnosed, or access to care, or look at how pain management, those of you that are regular on the show will know that pain management and social prescribing had a huge part in turning my life around, at a time when I was very unwell back in 2019, and mentally unwell and suicidal, I think it's fair to say, because I was left with chronic pain and nobody was prepared to help me other than keep taking your painkillers. And then I discovered these services that were on my doorstep because one person signposted to me, and we shouldn't be in a position where people don't know that these things are available. So by you sharing those lived experiences, what worked, what didn't, it might just help somebody get a better outcome. So it doesn't have to be grand, guys. Tracy, I felt like I was 50 since I was about 18. My joints, I don't know what normal joints feel like, to be honest. Like now my knees creak, and I have no idea if it's the years of arthritis or wear and tear. I did once have a neck MRI, because my neck had been causing me problems for years, and I was basically just told, oh, it's just wear and tear. I was like, how am I supposed to know that? I've had arthritis in it on and off for decades. But guys, thank you so much for joining me. There's some lovely comments there. We knew Simon was going to be very popular. Sorry we didn't get around to everything tonight. I was conscious of keeping him on a Sunday evening. As you heard, I don't know how I fit it all in sometimes, and sometimes I don't, and I break, and we have to take a few weeks off on the show. For those of you that follow on Twitch will know that I haven't been streaming very regularly because I've had to take my foot off the pedal a little bit to fit everything in. And then when you hear everything Simon does, it's just incredible. So I'm very grateful that he gave up his Sunday evening to be with us tonight. If you want to know more about links where you can find our peer support spaces, guys, how you can watch either these or listen to them back on podcasts, find us on Twitch where people play computer games to help distract and escape from their pain, or just generally want to get in touch and talk, then you can find those there by scanning the QR code or going to that link tree address, just Joel vs Arthritis, or just Google Joel vs Arthritis. I don't think I've got to worry about any copycats. I don't know if we've got anything else to cover, guys. So just the usual admin. So June, it's going to be very quiet on the Chronic Pain Club. I'm going to be doing EULAR. I'm going to be doing the IFPA conference in Stockholm. I'm doing lots of mobile podcasting, so you will be able to find lots of episodes. There's going to be daily episodes through EULAR, so wish me luck on that as we record all day, edit overnight, and try and get them out the next day for breakfast. That's going to be going on whilst we're in EULAR. We'll do another episode probably when I'm out in Stockholm for the IFPA conference, but very little in terms of live streaming because there just isn't time in June. And then July, we're back on the Chronic Pain Club, but we do have some dates to fill. I've got the amazing Vanessa Carter joining us later this summer from the AMR narrative. She recently spoke at the World Health Congress, which was amazing. So I'll look forward to talking about that. But if you're somebody with lived experience, like we've been talking about tonight, if you represent a patient organisation, if you're a medical professional in the industry, want to talk about your good work around, you've heard the themes tonight, guys. You only need to watch one of these shows to know what we're about. Lived experience, shared decision making, co-creation, peer support, and basically the holistic approach to chronic illnesses. We know the system, we've talked a little bit about it tonight, is not really built for long-term health conditions. It's a triage system that kind of doesn't really work when a condition doesn't go away over time, or you can't fix your broken leg and send you back out of the door. So that's what we're about. If you've got anything you want to share, elevate, help reach either patients or raise awareness of good work in that space, or got a story to tell, then please do get in touch. Until next time, guys, I think I'm probably going to call it a night there because the weather is finally decent in the UK. It might be a little bit of time for me to still get back out in the garden and get some fresh air. Thank you for everyone who joined me tonight. A massive thank you again for Simon. We'll definitely get him back. Thank you for all the messages I've already received about getting Simon back. And until next time, guys, enjoy what's left of your weekend. I hope it's helped distract you for an hour of your Sunday evening before we all face Monday morning again. And until next time, I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.